96. Doctrine of Selective Depravity, Part 2. Chalcedon Report number 133, September 1976. The doctrine of selective depravity is a doctrine of radical Pharisaism. By isolating depravity in a particular class, race, or group, it implicitly locates virtue in all others, particularly in the defining group. If evil is a national or racial trait, then membership in the other group, whether black, white, red or yellow, Anglo-Saxon, Arab, Japanese or whatever it may be, constitutes virtue. All, quote, facts, end quote, are collected to prove the point. We are the good guys, they are the bad guys. This is a very widespread and common practice, but it is no less evil and Pharisaic for that. As a boy, I picked up an interesting form of this doctrine of selective depravity. My father went to Scotland for his advanced degrees and fell in love with the people and country. His Scottish friends kept me well supplied with books and magazines full of Scottish tales. Sir William Wallace was an early hero. The English were the villains, foul despoilers of all things good and pure. My American history confirmed that. I have since learned differently, but not because my wife is of Scottish ancestry. At any rate, Scottish nationalism is no surprise to me. I am only amazed that it took so long to develop. But to return to the very aspects of the doctrine of selective depravity, it is inevitably a doctrine of murder. Sin must be destroyed. If sin is in us, we must, through Christ, destroy the principle of sin in order to be redeemed and to redeem history. However, if sin is incarnate in a race or class, it is then logical to destroy that race or class. Capital punishment is basic to human action, whether admittedly so or not. Marx placed virtue in the workers and evil in the middle and upper class. Hence, Marxism works to execute and eradicate the incarnations of evil in its midst. Hitler defined the evil class as the Jews, hence the Jews had to be destroyed. Hitler himself had no anti-Jewish beliefs. His action was pragmatic. However, the logic of his position required, in a time of emergency, the elimination of evil. The result was the gas chamber. In the latter days of the war, he believed that the Germans were unworthy of him and betraying him, so he set the stage for the destruction and partition of Germany. Whatever form the doctrine of selective depravity takes, it is a call, logically, for murder, and it begins to express itself accordingly. It declares, the only good Indian is a dead Indian. The only good Jap is a dead Jap. The only good nigger is a dead nigger. The only good honky is a dead honky, or white. The only good cop is a dead cop. The only good lawyer is a dead lawyer, according to something passed on to me today, and so on and on. The doctrine of selective depravity leads not only to Pharisaism and murder, but to a Pharisaic self-righteousness about the most vicious murders. It closes the door to Christ's salvation because it defines sins, not in terms of every man's apostasy from God and the fall of man in Adam, the federal head of all men, without any exception, save the second Adam, Jesus Christ. But it defines sin in terms of some men, other people. Salvation, then, means the elimination of these other people. On all sides of the political scene, the answer to problems is in terms of the doctrine of selective depravity. Who is to blame? Why, the communists, the conservatives, the whites, blacks, Jews, capitalists, workers, or what have you. The result is a radical incapacity to deal with the problem. Every, quote, answer, end quote, only aggravates it. In terms of Scripture, every man is created in God's image to be God's covenant keeper and to be a dominion man, subduing the earth under God's law, to be God's kingdom. No man is exempt from this calling. It is not enough to profess faith and to be moral. We are called upon to develop God's dominion requirements and to make every area we live and work in an outpost of His kingdom. Otherwise, we are called unprofitable servants and are cast into the outer darkness. Matthew chapter 25, verse 30. The means to dominion is the law of God, the means to sanctification. God's covenant people live in terms of God's covenant law. This means tithing, restitution, responsibility, the family as the basic governmental and social unit, and much, much more. There are different kinds of outlaws and prisoners in the jail. Some are there for major offences like murder, rape and kidnapping. Others are petty criminals with a string of small crimes. But all are outlaws. Similarly, if we feel that we have not committed any major sins against God and are therefore still a part of His family, we must remember that all sin has as its principle the belief that my will, not God's, be done, unless it is to my advantage and convenience to obey God. The principle of selective obedience is as offensive to God as the principle of selective depravity. The covenant man knows that his problem was total depravity. In every area of his life, he served himself rather than God. By God's grace, he is now a redeemed man, a dominion man, and therefore a lawman, not an outlaw. Christ's declaration becomes his also. Lo, I come to do thy will, O God. Hebrews chapter 10, verse 9. Salvation for him is not the elimination or murder of a social class, race or group, but the atoning death and the resurrection of Jesus Christ. The mark of salvation and the way of sanctification is the delight in God's law word and his desire to place his whole life and world under God's law. His calling becomes, in the words of T. Robert Ingram, the world under God's law, beginning with himself. This is not a doctrine of salvation by murder. It is a calling to regeneration and life in and through Christ.